This is, hi, Chris Paveloi. I'm working internship and career services for Kent State University at Stark. And we were discussing some ways that we could reach out to students, obviously. So first and foremost, let me start by saying I hope that each and every one of you are staying safe and working through this. I know it's been a huge change, both for myself and certainly, and I should say more importantly, for students. So I wanted to thank you for rolling with the punches, and I wanted to be able to reach out to folks today so we could get a little work done when it comes to the work we do here in internship and career services. So basically for Facebook Live today, I'm just going to be reviewing 4 what we call most frequently asked questions. And these were things that we'll typically cover in a career appointment. There are also things that we will typically cover in some of the courses I teach, like career navigation and the Intro to Professional Development course through the College of Business. So we're going to start with these 4 frequently asked questions and work our way through each. And as questions come in, if they do, Mike's going to send them to me and I'll answer them as best I can. So let's go ahead and get started. First question, and I'm actually going to give you all 4, but we'll start with the first one. How do I start the process of writing a resume, and what resources should I be using to do that? The second is, when and how should I start looking for an internship opportunity? And I'll give you a few thoughts on that. How do I prepare for an employment interview? Obviously, whether it's for an internship, a full-time job, even some part-time jobs, there is the interview process to consider. So we'll touch on some of the resources for that. And then finally, how do I decide on an academic major or minor? If I've come to school, and really that can be in general one of 3 categories. You've come to college and you're not exactly sure what you want to do. You've come to college and you get 1 or 2 semesters into the major and you slowly start to discover that maybe this isn't the right fit for you. Or if you have a really good idea of what you want to do, but you're not quite sure how it fits into the world of work, that is all stuff that we cover in our individual career advising appointments. Want to give a shout out to my partner in crime, Sean Fowler. Sean Fowler is our assistant director for internship and career services. She handles a lot of our employer relations and all of our internship stuff. So between Sean and I, we are located, when we're back on campus, in the lower level of the campus center building in the Academic Success Center. So if you know where the food emporium and the bookstore is, we're in that lower level. I should start all of this by saying as well that our work has not stopped due to the quarantine. We are routinely meeting with students, and you can reach out directly to us. I'm sure if you just do a quick Google search for internship and career services, Kent State Stark, you can find Sean or my email address, and we are doing appointments by phone and over the computer and communicating with anyone who asks through email. So we are open for business during this quarantine. I don't want you to think that services are stopped just because we are on quarantine. All right, so let's go ahead and get into a little bit about what we want to talk about today. First thing, and I'm going to do a quick screen share. Everything that I'm going to be talking about today, you can find through kent.edu/career/tips. So if you notice, I'm going to do the screen share right now. Hold on 1 second while I figure out how to do it. There we go. So you can see the screen share. Where I'm pulling this information from, again, is at the Career Tips website. We've got a number of features like career advice videos, which I think do a really good job of answering some very specific questions. If you take a minute to review these videos, I'm sure you'll find a lot of really good information. The first thing we want to talk about is resume writing, and you'll notice in this section, additional career tips, we have lots of samples and examples of resume and cover letter writing. So I'm going to dip into some of these examples right here. Brings up a PDF that obviously covers both chronological and functional resumes, talks a little bit about functional resumes in particular, and when that might be a good opportunity to, or a good chance to use the functional format. As a general rule of thumb, and I don't want to get too deep into this because we're not working one-on-one, but as a general rule of thumb, if you are an individual who has a fair amount of experience in the work field, let's say you are a nursing major and you've completed your clinicals, you have a nursing degree, and that degree obviously matches exactly with the type of work you want to do. Same for, let's say, an education major or someone with extensive work experience in the field that they're studying already. A chronological resume, what you think of as a chronological resume, which is the classic example of what most people think of when they're writing a resume, is the best bet. And we'll get to some of the samples here in a moment. A different form of a resume is a functional format resume, and a functional format resume really is beneficial, as you can see, when much of your work is either freelance or consulting or temporary. Like so many college students, if the work you've done thus far is more along the lines of part-time work, restaurant work, retail work, and you want to get into a field that isn't like that, if you've been working in a field with relatively disconnected work experiences, a functional format resume is probably the way to go. In addition, if you're making a significant career change, there's been an extended absence from work, and again, you can read those bullet points for yourself. But there's really two main formats, the chronological and the functional. If we look at some of our examples, and there are many, I'm just scrolling through them, but if we take a look at one like this is a traditional, Susan A. Brown here, is a traditional chronological resume. You state an objective, you denote what your education is, you give me some skills, and then it's considered a chronological format resume because it goes in the order of which the jobs happen. Pretty straightforward. As we get further down here, though, when I talk with students, what I find most often is we are talking about a functional resume format. And a functional resume format, the key difference you notice is we don't spend a ton of time on chronology. There is some chronology, but mostly we're focusing right here in the meat of the document on skills. And this becomes very important because oftentimes our education, the degree we're finishing, and perhaps even our work experience doesn't always do the best job of articulating what skills we have. So we have to take it on ourselves to show the employer that this is the skill that we can provide them. It's something I mention in any seminar or any class that I get in front of, or any one-on-one conversation. The bottom line with job searching is you have to present yourself as an individual who can solve problems, who can work for the organization, someone who can be an asset. So just giving them a rundown of the places you worked that really don't have anything to do with the type of work they do is really not to your advantage. What is to your advantage is outlining specific skill sets, and we will talk with you one-on-one to help you kind of come up with those. But this takes a more functional and I think a higher impact format of resume writing to the individual. So the first step in the process, I'm going to get off the screen share here. The first step in the process is you have to sit down and put together a rough draft using some of the templates and some of the examples that you can grab right from kent.edu/career. Once you've put that rough draft together, remember, this is a writing process just like an English paper, just like a term paper, just like anything else. The rough draft then becomes something that we can build upon and edit and revise to get it to be the polished document that it needs to be. Internships, full-time employment for sure. Almost any internship that you see and almost every full-time job you see is going to require a resume. but even things like graduate school, if you're thinking about getting into graduate school, things like some part-time jobs. Again, these are things that a resume and a well-written resume is going to get you noticed. So while you have some downtime perhaps this summer, or if you're caught up on your schoolwork, my biggest suggestion to you would be to sit down and use a template to write that rough draft of a resume. If you schedule an appointment with one of us, whether it be remotely or when we are in person, if there is no rough draft, we really don't have a starting point. So it's important to get that rough draft done. I'll walk you through how to do the rough draft if we meet one-on-one, but that means we're going to have several appointments. So that is a step that you could be taking when you do have some free and some downtime to get this process started. Okay. Move on to the second question. When should I start looking for an internship? Really, internships are one of the things that I think I always refer to it as, let's demystify what the process is for an internship, because it can be pretty confusing. There are examples of academic programs, and I'm just going to talk about a few from Stark, where you really don't have a choice as to whether you will or will not do an internship. Some of the easy ones that come to mind are, again, degrees like nursing, where if you want to major in nursing and you say, I want to take all the courses, but I don't want to do clinicals, they're going to tell you, you need to pick something else, because a clinical, which is basically a nursing internship, is required for graduation. And that's a big thing that I think a lot of students don't understand right away. Certain academic programs, nursing, education, human development and family studies, applied communication, just to name a few, built into the degree program is an internship, or you'll hear it referred to as a clinical or a practicum or a student teaching, something like that. For other academic majors, you're going to hear language as you're a student that can sometimes be a little confusing. Like, it is strongly suggested that business management majors do an internship. Well, what does strongly suggested really mean? Well, strongly suggested means for those who complete an internship, even though the program may not require you to do it, they're going to be at a decided advantage when they go to apply for full-time jobs, because they're going to have relevant work experience that isn't working at a gas station or working in a restaurant. And I'm not knocking that. I worked in a restaurant for 7 years, so I understand that people have to pay their bills and do jobs that maybe they don't want to do long-term, but they're doing it now just for money. That's fine. But along with that, you have to remember, from the employer's side, you need to be able to give them a convincing argument that, hey, this person has skill sets that I think would be attractive to help grow my organization, grow my business, grow my cause, whatever the case may be. And internships, by and large, are the best way to get some of that experience. Now, there is some other confusion when it comes to internships when we talk about, well, should I get academic credit or should I not? Again, in certain cases, you don't have a choice. The nursing, the education, the human development, those are courses you sign up for. You have to do it. You don't have a choice. But in other cases, you have a little more liberty. You have a little more freedom as to whether you seek an internship or not. And you can also choose to take a credit or a non-credit option. The bottom line is you can start looking for internships whenever you want. The employer or the organization who is sponsoring the internship, not the university. This is key. The employer and the organization that is sponsoring the internship, they write up the criteria that they're looking for. So just off the top of my head, I take an example like Goodyear, the company Goodyear. Goodyear may submit an internship proposal to us and say, we'd like to advertise this to Kent State University students. And we say, great. And they send us what their criteria is. And it might be business related major, 3.0 grade point average or higher, junior, senior standing. That doesn't mean that the university, by any stretch of the imagination, put those limitations on that posting. That means that's what Goodyear's looking for. So in Goodyear's eyes, they say, if you don't have a 3.0, if you're not a business or business related major and you're not a junior, don't bother applying. Whereas another organization may say, we'll take freshmen, we'll take sophomores, we'll take juniors, we'll take seniors. We really don't care. They have to have a certain grade point average, but maybe they put that grade point average at 2.5. And then you go down the road and you talk to XYZ Corporation, and they're like, we only want seniors and we only want liberal arts majors like English, psychology, history, so on and so forth. So it's very important to understand that the employer sets the criteria of what they're looking for, and they express that through a job posting. Now, all of those postings can be found through a system called Handshake. And I'm going to bring that up on the screen here in just a second. So go to my share screen here. Again, I'm getting used to it just like you guys are. Handshake is a platform that only Kent State University students and alumni have access to. So when you go to the homepage, you can go right here to log in to Kent State University, and you will be able, when I get here, I'm going to just put my credentials in here real quick. Give me 1 second. To view specific jobs and specific internships that are currently being recruited for, and read the specific job description of what they might be looking for. So right here, we've got a marketing account manager at Donovan Digital Solutions. If we click on that, we're going to get the job posting, the responsibilities, what they are looking for, what the salaries are, and all that good stuff right there. So I would absolutely encourage you to, if you're sitting around and you have a little bit of free time during quarantine, jump on the Handshake site. And you can do that by logging straight into Flashline, or you can go directly through the Career Services webpage here with Handshake. All of the internship opportunities that Kent State University is aware of, literally what happens, other regional campuses too. Employer calls us and says, yeah, we'd like to post an internship opportunity. Great. They send us the information, and then that information goes into the Handshake account. So it's kind of a one-stop shop. The other benefit of Handshake is it gives you what we call kind of exclusive access. So only Kent State University students and alumni have access to that. One of the bigger problems that we see with some of the other job search portals that are out there is that they are pay to play, literally. So you have to pay as an organization to put your information up there. There's not as strong of a vetting process of those as employers as there are on college campuses. If Kent State University decides they don't want to post an internship because they think an employer really isn't giving the best opportunity, we have the right to refuse that posting. So we vet through that to try to get out of some of the bad stuff that's out there that leads students down the wrong path. Now, are we 100% on that? Of course not. We work hard every day to try to make sure that we're getting the best opportunities to our students. But that's one of the advantages that you have by using Handshake. I'm going to move on to question number 3. And again, I'm going to navigate over to our screen share. But our third question is, how do I prepare for and get ready, for an employment interview? So if we take a look again at the tips sheet through career exploration and development, we have a lot of great information on interview preparation and etiquette. Let that come up here. Basically telling you how to do research on an organization. We break down interview attire, including recommendations for both men and women. We talk a lot about making a positive first impression, and we also talk about a thank you letter and common reasons for applicant rejection. But if we really get into the meat of this, when we're talking about interviewing, what it comes down to is preparing for, and this is something we teach on a regular basis in our classes what we call behavioral-based interviewing. And behavioral-based interviewing can best be described as a interview that will ask probing questions to require the candidates to share examples. So when you think about employment interviews, you're probably used to some of the very canned interview questions that you see in movies and TV, excuse me. Things like, so tell me a little bit about yourself and what are your greatest strengths and weaknesses and where do you see yourself 5 years from now, or if you could be a tree, what kind of tree would you be, and all that. Those are questions that frankly come up in interviews, but they're kind of gap or space fillers, if you will. The meat of a very good employment interview are going to be behavioral-based questions. So questions like, give us an example of an occasion when you used logic to solve a problem, or describe a decision you made that was unpopular and how you handled it, where you are forced to share more of a story. It's not just, oh, this is what I think or this is my opinion, but you actually have to walk the employer or the person interviewing you, because again, remember, you're trying to make a strong, positive impression with them, through situation, task, action, and result. So give me an example of an occasion when you use logic to solve a problem. You would have to describe what that specific situation was. I was working at XYZ Corporation and my boss came to me and said, we have a shipping issue that needs your attention. My specific task was we had over-ordered 2,000 widgets instead of gidgets, so I had to find out a way to get our suppliers these gadgets and widgets without overrunning our warehouse. My action step was to do these 3 things, and then as a result, we were able to solve the problem and my employer was happy. Situation, task, action, result is what we call a STAR story. So the idea behind all of this is that interviewing becomes you sharing a story about you at work. It's not just opinion. It's not just Googling what you think the appropriate answer would be and spoon feeding back to the employer something you think they want to hear. It's much deeper than that. And the main reason that behavioral-based questions are used these days is because prior behaviors are the best predictor of a person's future success with an organization. So if you can articulate to the employer, you know, this is something I've dealt with before. Maybe it wasn't with your organization or with your product or with your constituents, but in my old job, I was asked to solve problems and here's how I did it. I was asked to deal with upset or angry customers. We've all worked those jobs. If you're working in retail, if you're working in food service, if you're working, you know, even in landscaping and you have accounts and things like that, you're always going to be dealing with people that are rude, with people that are upset, with people that want to get a deal. So how you explain that STAR response, situation, task, action, result, can oftentimes give you a leg up on those who can't articulate what their experiences are. When we talk about interviews, remember, I think a lot of times people don't give the proper reverence, I guess would be the term, or they try to dummy down their jobs and say, oh, I was just a server, or oh, I was just a cashier. The people that actually take that seriously and say, okay, I can apply some transferable skills to this. This is how I dealt with upset or angry customers in a cashiering situation. It's really not that different than dealing with an upset or angry client. It's a different situation. And you may think, well, I wasn't getting paid as much money, but you still dealt with those problems just the same. In addition, this handy handout gives us difficult questions and kind of how to strategize answering those. So tell me about yourself. What is your biggest weakness? Why do you want to work for us? Where do you want to be in 5 or 10 years? Why should I hire you? These are all questions, along with some of these popular interview questions, that we can strategize and help you um, be able to answer those in a little more succinct fashion. We do have a question that's come in. Do you have any tips for students who are out of work or unable to do their internship because of this current situation? Well, do I? I do. I think first and foremost, one of the best things you could do right now if you're looking for an opportunity is to jump on Handshake and start looking for some of the things that are being offered. If you are talking about it in an internship situation, because of the current situation, if you had a secured internship, you had already made arrangements with someone to do an internship and that's been somehow canceled. Of course, from this question, I don't know what the exact situation is, but I'm going to hypothesize. Or they've said, we simply don't have room to do internships in our current economic situation. I would reach out for sure to myself or my colleague, Sean Fowler, so that we could talk one-on-one about your specific situation. In Sean's work, she does employer outreach and works really hard at placing interns. So if you lost an opportunity, Sean may be sitting on one right now that might even be a better fit or might be as good of a fit as what we saw before. Besides that, I think what it comes down to is you got to make sure that you are prepared to do a resume, prepared to do an interview, prepared through working with one of us to make sure that everything is as polished as possible. And then you start applying for and looking for opportunities. Looking for opportunities is not going to be too much different than what it is right now. I mean, so much of this is done online. So just because you can't go to an organization or just because maybe the interview is going to be through Zoom or through Skype or, whatever, instead of in person doesn't mean that they won't be moving on things. Now, I will also say that given the current situation with a lot of things being in flux, you might start hearing things like, we haven't made any decisions at this time. We're going to table that at this time. We're not sure where we are. But proactivity is much better than reactivity. So if you are a current student who is out of work or unable to do their internship because of the current situation, it's time to start looking for other opportunities, and we can help with that. The other thing I would mention is if you're out of work, you got to make sure that if you are eligible, you're applying for unemployment. No one really knows at this point, despite what they try to say on television, how long this is going to last. So you need to take the proactive steps to make sure you've got some money coming in to get you by until we go to the next phase of this. Those probably aren't the greatest answers in the world, but that's the reality of the situation right now. I would proactively look for opportunities. And I know for sure Sean would echo, because I talk with her almost every day, that she is continuing to place individuals in opportunities for summer and for fall. All right. So in absence of any other questions coming in, I'm going to go ahead. Thank you for your question, by the way. I'm going to go ahead and talk about this last frequently asked question. The last frequently asked question is, how do I make a decision about getting into an academic major or a minor? And we talk quite a bit about this one-on-one with students. I'm going to do a quick screen share here in a second. But the bottom line with making a decision on an academic major or an academic minor comes down, and I've shared this, to doing all of the things that you can to do research on and do some self-assessment. We actually offer, and if you contact me individually, cpaveloi@kent.edu, C, P as in Paul, A, V as in Victor, E as... Let me start over. cpaveloi@kent.edu. I don't know why I tried to spell everything out there. I will go ahead and get you some information on an assessment that's called My Plan. I'm going to actually go to the My Plan site right now if you took an FYE course, there's probably a very good chance that you completed a My Plan assessment already. But that's kind of the foundation of what we use in career services to help guide students when we start talking about things like personality, interests, skills, and values. So a My Plan assessment will basically break down what your personality, interests, skills, and work values are like. These are things that you need a license code to access. So if you reach out to me individually, I will send you a quick email with login information on how to get into a My Plan assessment. When I work one-on-one with students, the My Plan assessment is not by any way, shape, or form to be taken and say, okay, here's a composite score. It tells you that you should be a lawyer, so why aren't you majoring in law? That's not what we do at all. What we do is we start a conversation about how your particular interests, skills, and values and abilities might match into some of the career fields that we see on a regular basis. Also, this is a very, very, very good resource, probably the best resource I've seen in quite some time, on giving you all of the pertinent information, the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, and the how much of any particular job that you are thinking about. So let's say you're considering being a clinical psychologist. It will give you a job description, specific requirements, related careers, significant points about the job, average salary, and all that good stuff. So I would highly encourage you to give us an opportunity to work with you one-on-one by not just completing that My Plan assessment, but having conversation and follow-up with that. Okay. Mike said he'd send me any questions if I shut up for a minute. So I'm going to shut up for 1 minute. No questions at this time, Mike says. Okay, Mike's very good at this. All right. So those are basically the 4 most frequently asked questions that I get on a regular basis. If you would like assistance with any of the things that we talked about today, reach out, cpaveloi at kent.edu. And then Sean Fowler, it's SFOWLE13 at kent.edu. We can do phone appointments. We can do something like this. If we use Zoom, we can certainly communicate through email. And we absolutely encourage you, again, if you have some downtime, I know there's stress with classes right now, and I know that this is all very new. I get that. I'm not saying that isn't valid. But if there is something that you have some downtime or in a situation where you find that you need some assistance, don't hesitate to reach out. I really appreciate Mike and the crew in marketing looking at Internship Career Services as a potential Facebook Live. It's the first time I ever did this, so I'm not rusty.